Hi, Grand Unified Theory of Love. Tony here, and I'm here with Evan to give you a quick introduction to some basic slash intermediate functions in Excel or Google Spreadsheet that can really kind of take you to the next level with using these tools to solve puzzles. We're going to do kind of three things today. Evan's going to give you an overview of some of the basic tools. I'm going to show you applying some of them to one puzzle, and then finally, Evan's going to show you applying them to another puzzle. So let's jump in.
Hey everyone, Evan here. In the Mystery Hunt, a lot of puzzles really follow the same format. The first and most important in a lot of ways thing that everyone has to do is collect a lot of data. This is going to be clued in, of course, by the puzzle. You're going to have to collect it from a lot of different things. But that's only half the battle. Once you have all the data, you need to know what to do with it. And a lot of times, what you're going to have to do is somehow index into that data. And what I mean by that is you're going to pick out individual pieces from that data, like maybe one letter from each word that the data gives back, that you get from the data, and those letters together are going to form a word.
There's lots of different ways that you'll see patterns in data, but as Evan was saying, indexing is the most common. So it might be like the first letter in every piece of data you get, the last letter, but the really, really common one you get is that you have some set of, text and some set of numbers that pair together, and you use those numbers to index into the data. So you take the second letter of the first word and the fifth letter of the second word and so on, and that will spell out either the answer or something that clues you into the answer. So knowing how to do this with a spreadsheet is really one of the most valuable skills you could have just for kind of your time, sanity, and efficiency at solving puzzles.
Now, when you index, there are going to be three key items that we need. The first, and possibly most obvious, is what exactly we're indexing into. So this is usually going to be a word. Perhaps there's a picture of an actor, and you have to identify the actor, and then that actor's name is what you're indexing into. The second item that you're going to need is a number to index into that actor's name. So maybe that actor's picture is from the second movie that actor ever acted in, and so you need to take the second letter of that actor's name. The final thing that you need is some way to order all of those letters that you get. So maybe the entire list of actors and the movies that we're given, those movies are sequential by year. One was in 1987, one was in 1988, and so we have to arrange the letters that we get by the year the movie came out. So without all three of those things, unfortunately, the only answer you're going to get is gibberish. Now, what we're going to be spending most of the rest of this tutorial talking about is, once we've collected all the data, what are some really helpful functions in either Excel or Google Docs that will let you do this indexing quickly and efficiently, and if you need to sort of change things up quickly, will let you do that without having to do a lot of rework. So we're going to talk primarily about three different things. The first aspect is going to be cleaning the text. When you get all the actors' names, sometimes there'll be a space in between the first and the last name, and we want to usually remove that space in order to index properly. The second item we're going to talk to is fast ways to actually index into the text that we need. And the final thing that we're going to talk about is actually a little bit more advanced. This is going to be discussing replacing sort of massive blocks of text, or replacing one letter with another letter through a variety of means. Alright, so the first step, cleaning text. A lot of times, for whatever reason, the text you're going to get is going to involve or include a lot of garbage. So here we have a couple of examples. The first one here is going to demonstrate the trim function. Trim is really handy because it strips any preceding or following spaces in a word. So here you can see in the sample data, Hello World has a bunch of spaces before it. Unfortunately, in Google Docs, that doesn't actually show, but you can see it up here in the bar. So what we're going to show you is how the trim function works. So the trim function is very, very easy. It's equal trim, and then it takes one entry, which is text. So in this case, it's going to be the value I have in cell B3, and that's all. Now, from looking at this, it doesn't look like anything was done, but that's actually an artifact of Google Docs. I'm going to paste this as a value real quick, and you're going to see that when I look at the actual entry up here, it doesn't have all those preceding spaces, whereas the value in cell B does.
And the big significance there is that when you're indexing into things, spreadsheets like Google Docs and Excel are literal. So if the first letter in your cell is a blank, it's going to give you a blank, when really what you mean is probably the first letter after a blank. So using trim to clear out blank space can be really important for being able to index successfully.
The second very handy function that you're going to use for cleaning up data that you have is the substitute function. Substitute will look through an entire entry, and anything that it sees that you've told it to remove, it will remove. So here in cell B4, I have entered hello world, and unfortunately, this entry here has a lot of A's in the middle of it that I don't want there. Now I'm using the A here just as an example. This could easily be done with periods, perhaps, colons, any sort of punctuation.
Spaces would be a big one. If you've got a movie title with spaces in between different words, you probably need those spaces removed before you index into it.
So the way that substitute works, substitute takes 3 arguments. The first is the actual thing that you're removing stuff from. So that's going to be the hello world. The second item, and if this is text, it's going to need to be in quotes, it usually will be text, is what you want to get rid of. The third item is what you want to replace that with. A lot of times we're going to be replacing that with just a nothing, in which case you just put 2 quote marks with nothing in between. And once you do that, you'll notice that hello world, with a bunch of A's in the middle, simply becomes hello world. Now you do have to be careful, because if there are, when you use substitute, it will replace anything that is matching that second part of the function, even if you don't want to. If instead of this being hello world, this were hello world, you'll notice that when we substitute, we just get hello world, which might not help us. So you do have to be a little bit careful when you're using substitute to make sure that you're only removing what you want to remove. All right. So the second main topic of this discussion is going to be indexing into text. And there's a really handy function in Excel that will let you index into text, and that is the mid function, MID. So for an example here, we have some sampled data, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And we're using that just because hopefully everyone knows that, for example, B is the second letter of the alphabet and D is the 4th letter. So when I use the mid function, it again is going to take usually 3 arguments. The first argument is what you're indexing into. So in this case, it's going to be cell B5, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The second item that you're going to provide to the mid function is which element numerically you want from the text you're indexing into. So if I want to pull out the E for Evan from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I'm going to need the 5th element of that text block. The final item that you need from a mid function is how many elements you're pulling. So the 5 is where you start, and then the next letter is how many characters you're taking, including that 5th letter, and then moving to the right. In this case, I only want 1. So when I finish this, I'm going to end up with the letter E.
And that's the most common way that you'll do indexing. You're pretty much always going to be indexing 1 unless there's something else funky going on with the puzzle, which is, possible. The other thing that's really nice about indexing is we'll show you later with the real live puzzle examples. When you've got it set up for one column, you can just click and drag and apply it to a whole bunch, and then that will just index through all your data.
A few times when you might want to pull more than one letter is if you have, for example, a sentence and you need to pull out a particular word from that sentence. It can be a little bit tricky in Excel, but you can use mid to do that. So 3 other functions that can be very helpful with both cleaning text and indexing into text are the len or length function, the right function, and the left function. Len very simply provides the length of a string that you give it. So it takes one argument. In this case, it's going to be the string A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And what it's going to return is the length of that string, 7 letters. The right function is very often used in conjunction with len. In this case, right is going to return a certain number of letters from the rightmost part of the string. So, for example, if I want just the two rightmost letters from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I'm going to type in right. It takes 2 items. The first is a text string, and the second is the number of letters that I want. So I get FG. Now, right and len can often be used together. For example, if I don't know ahead of time how long my string is, but I know that I want all but the first 3 letters in that string, I can quite simply go right and then my string, and then I'm going to take the length of that string and subtract 3 from it. So just to, again, go through what exactly I'm doing here, I have the right function that I'm saying I want the string I have in B7, and I want the right letters of that string except for the first 3 letters in that string. So I'm taking the length of that string and subtracting 3 from it. And this will provide for me the answer DEFG. Left is the analog to right. It is providing the first few letters in a string. And again, just like right, it takes 2 arguments, what the string is that you're looking at, and how many letters you're getting from it. So if I just want the first 2 letters from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I go left, string, then 2, and it will provide me with AB. Similar to right, this can also be used in conjunction with the length function in a very similar way. Now that I've gone through a quick overview of some of the primary things we're going to be discussing here, Tony is going to give you the first example of a puzzle in which we used many of these functions to good effect.